Good morning and welcome to this month's webinar as we discuss fire and insurance, what homeowners and renters need to know before and after the fire. I'm joined by my colleagues across state government, our Deputy Commissioner Keith Nyan, Rebecca Kauser, and Fire Marshal Sean Toomey. I'm happy to introduce Keith Nyan for some introductions, but before I do that, one quick housekeeping item. We're happy to entertain questions. Please type them into the chat box and we'll address them at the end of the presentation. Appreciate everyone joining us, and to get us started, Deputy Commissioner Keith Nyan.
Thank you very much, Andrew. First, on behalf of the Insurance Department and Commissioner Betancourt, very glad to have quite a few people join us today on the webinar. It looks like we have 20 plus, with more joining as we speak. And special note of appreciation to Fire Marshal's office in particular. We have Marshal Toomey on the webinar today, and his colleague Rebecca Kauser, and from the Insurance Department, my colleague Luann King. So with that, thank you very much for joining us. We find these webinars have been a great way to reach residents and about the importance of insurance, and what better topic than, fire and the importance of, fire protection and how it relates to your insurance product. So with that, I'm going to transition over to Marshal Toomey. And again, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Keith. We're excited to be here and really appreciate the opportunity to partner with you guys. I think this is a great topic to collaborate on. So bear with me just a second. I'm going to pop up our slides. Hopefully everyone's seeing that quick intro slide right now with us. Just New Hampshire Department of Safety, Division of Fire Safety Office, State Fire Marshal. Just want to, our goal today, I guess, is just to kind of cover for everyone. I see some of our fire service partners on and a few others. So a little bit of repeat for some of our fire service folks, but I think the tag into the insurance side is going to be a nice tie to show what the end product is if you end up in a fire. So we're going to kind of cover some of the data that we've had, what we're seeing for fires in the last 5 years or so, and kind of talk a little bit about what we do for our office in the fire investigation world, and then just a highlight quick view overall what the office does so people can see what we're doing. So without further ado here, so our mission to the Fire Marshal's office is to save lives and property through education, engineering, and enforcement. On the education side, it can be teaching someone, whether it's youth or adults or anyone in between, the value of fire education. You think about when we were kids in school, learn to stop, drop, and roll, don't play with matches, having 2 ways out of your house, making sure your smoke and carbon monoxide alarms work, those types of things is what comes to my mind instantly on the education front. But it's also, we want to teach people the importance of having systems in place to protect yourself from fire, whether it's, and Rebecca will cover this a little bit later on, but heating safety with your space heaters, or not using too many extension cords plugged in. Those types of things are also an education front, which kind of play into our inspectional side of the house. Engineering side is really all about the built environment. What systems are in place to make your whether it's you work, live, or play safe. The construction's right, the systems are right, whether it's your smoke or CO, and maybe in your office settings, the sprinkler fire alarm systems. We want to make sure those are proper into our state building and fire codes. And then on the enforcement side, it could be as simple as making sure we enforce those codes, or it could also be our law enforcement staff in the office following up on an arson and prosecuting the crime of arson for someone that's set a fire in the state. So, and we do that through our values of our professionalism, integrity, respect, and consistency. So as I said, I want to kind of do a highlight. We have 3 bureaus in our office: Bureau of Investigations, Bureau of Building Safety and Construction, Bureau of Outreach and Education. I always think that the Bureau of Investigations is the one that most people know us as. That's the one that people see when we're out after a fire. And that's kind of what we're talking about overall today. But they're the ones that are doing the fire and explosion investigations. By statute, our office has to investigate anything has a death resulting, whether it's fire, carbon monoxide, or a building collapse. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of building collapses in the state, but Unfortunately, the trend of deaths in our office has gone up, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But overall, we go to about 100 fires per year throughout the state to do investigations. Over 200 calls we get from communities looking for, asking a question about a fire. Can you give me a little bit of guidance here? And as I said, 200 calls roughly, about 100 of them we go out to. But the law has asked that all fires be investigated. So, and we'll talk a little bit more as we go, but just because we don't go out as the state fire marshal's office doesn't mean the fire doesn't get investigated. The local fire chief or their local fire prevention officials, local fire marshals will do the investigations. Our fire academy in the state has a great certified fire investigator program, and we're seeing more and more fire officials throughout the state coming through that program and learning the science around fire investigation, which is critical. So that's a little bit about that. We do a lot of assistance. Like we'll partner with another, say a Manchester or a Concord might call us for a complicated scene, or they might be down staff, and we may not lead that investigation, but we'll work as partners to work through the investigation. We have 2 canines in our office. You see a picture of both of them, and then one at work in the slide. Their goal is to sniff out accelerants or ignitable liquids, and that's a great tool to help us identify if someone uses an ignitable liquid to start a fire. And it's better than us trying to find through a big pile of debris, specifically where that dog, where someone poured something, but the dogs can pinpoint it in just an instant, and it helps us with evidence collection. And unfortunately, we do a bunch with youth fire setters. We do probably a couple a month that kids are playing with fire, and it's concerning. It can lead to trends further in life. So we want to get to it early and put a stop to that if we can. On the Bureau of Building Safety and Construction, that's largely our regulatory side of the house and the inspectional side. But I'll just highlight real quick. I mean, we do the state building permit program. So we inspect where the code officials for all state-owned properties or in communities that lack commercial code enforcement will help them in that area. We provide technical assistance to fire and building officials, inspect state properties, and you can see the tram and amusement, fireworks, schools and healthcare facilities. So every public school and every licensed healthcare facility in the office in the state comes through our office. And new as of July is mechanical safety, which includes gas and plumbing, and electrical safety programs came back to our office after a stint over at the Office of Professional Licensure and Certification. Looking forward to having them on board. Electrical safety and gas tend to be in issues that we sometimes see on the fire investigation side. So having their expertise here in the office will be beneficial as we look to keep people safe in those areas. On the Bureau of Outreach and Education, we have our community risk reduction programs. So you can see some pictures there whether it's a national night out or going into the schools. Our goal is to teach programs like we're doing today or out into the fire departments at least twice a month. But last year we hit just under 100 outreach events, and that's the schools and national night outs and things like that. Our goal this year is to hopefully to at least get 100, maybe a little bit more. The dogs are a famous, partner here. I think they're what most people like to see, but we just over 40 canine demos. They're always a hit, and we reached over 12,000 people last year for our outreach. But really trying to find as many creative ways as we can to get fire safety messaging out. We're using our data that we pull in from the fire departments across the state to kind of hone in on our education, right? So what are we seeing as the fire problem, if you will, in the state, and trying to tailor our messaging into that area. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes, but the Fire Safe Cigarette Program, we collect a little bit of revenue from the sale of cigarettes in the state, and the Fire Safe Cigarettes. Fortunately, there was a number of years ago there was an issue with cigarettes burning on upholstery and mattresses, and there was efforts made to make them more fire safe. Not to mean that it doesn't happen, but one of our big issues we saw last year was smoking on oxygen. That continues to be a trend, and we're trying to get ahead of that and messaging on that. We do a lot with hazardous materials, and then also we support the State Emergency Operations Center on big incidents, and then the fire mobilization plan is also a big incident thing. So let's get into a little bit about why we're here more in detail, but I wanted to share a little bit of the bigger reach of our office to show what some of the stuff we're doing. So over the last 5 years, fire departments across our state responded to just over 1,000 home fires per year on an average. You can see in the graph that unfortunately in New Hampshire, the trend is going up. We don't have a great can't pinpoint the reason for that at this point, but it is a little bit of a concerning trend, obviously, for us that our numbers of home fires is increasing. We also are seeing our number of home deaths are also increasing. So we're really spending a lot of time recently trying to look into the data and see if we figure out the why, and then tailor our messaging to that to help prevent that and as we move forward. Nationally, the fire trend is trending down slightly. It was huge in the early 70s, and it's been on a downward trend. And then as you say, our New Hampshire numbers are going up a little bit, not a ton, but I'd like to, as our state fire marshal, I'd love to see that going down, not up. So working on that. What we are seeing for causes are heating, cooking, and electrical. On the heating front, it could be unattended cooking, right? So I think about, as I was, thinking about this over the last couple of days, just over the weekend, I was cooking up some eggs for my kids, and one of the boys spilled some stuff, and I stepped away from our stove for just a minute, and ended up burning the eggs. And here I am, the state fire marshal, and this is happening to me. So think about maybe someone with elderly with dementia or something like that steps away for a long period of time, or someone that may be under the influence of drugs or alcohol, and they step away for a long period of time, and we end up with a kitchen fire. So heating is, I'm jumped ahead to cooking. Sorry, I'm ahead of myself. But on the cooking front, so those are the types of things we're seeing on the cooking is where people do. Still, as much as we try, if there's a grease fire, someone will throw water on it and spread it, or people inevitably try to carry something burning from their kitchen out through the house, and they spread fire throughout their house. So, we try to message some of that kind of stuff. On the heating front, go back to that. It's really heating related, and it's a broad range of things. It could be your space heaters, as I mentioned earlier, whether it's they're plugged into extension cords that are not not suitable, so that kind of comes into a heating and electrical mix, or you have a portable space heater that's too close to combustibles. Like we try to tell you as a general rule of thumb, keep anything that can burn 3 feet away from anything that's sort of hot. There's exceptions to that when you really dig into manufacturer instructions, but a good rule of thumb is, keep that 3-foot distance. And we go back to my kids' story a little bit, whether it's cooking or heating, keeping kids away from that, keeping pets away from, heating and cooking issues. On the heating front, it could be equipment that's not serviced, whether it's your gas equipment or your wood stoves and fireplaces. Maybe the chimneys aren't being cleaned. Those types of issues are coming up, and we're seeing a lot of those. So when you see the heating cause, it could be a number of things, and the cooking is a little bit of could be a bigger, broader category. Nationally, those two tend to flip flop a little bit, but as New Hampshire, heating's first, cooking's second currently. On the electrical front, could be overloaded extension cords. We have older housing stock in New Hampshire, and people, electrical systems may not be up to par. We have, rodent damage, as I mentioned, overloading, those type of issues. There's some great technologies now that actually insurance companies are paying us as consumers that you can plug in. It will monitor your electrical system for faults. So that's something good to check out with your insurance companies or research online. there's a couple different systems out there that will monitor your electrical system for faults. And I know personally, my insurance company will provide some. If it sees a fault, it'll contribute some money to bring in a licensed electrician in to try to help troubleshoot and fix that to prevent fires in the future. So it's a little snapshot of sort of the fire trends in New Hampshire, some of the leading causes. Now I want to jump to sort of the investigation in general. So there's a fire. I would suggest that a fire loss in someone's home is one of the probably more tragic things that you can go through. And then if you put in loss of, potentially a family member, pets, things like that, it just ramps that up even more. But, as you can see in the picture with, the canine in the picture kind of sifting through debris, right? There's nothing left in a lot of these scenarios. And it's family pictures, heirlooms, all those memorable things that you just can't get back. You're left after a fire with sometimes with all you have left is the clothes on your back if you're lucky to have that, and hopefully you and your loved ones don't have any injuries, or as I mentioned, worst case a fatality in some of these scenes. But as I mentioned, our office investigates fatal fires predominantly, but we also assist the locals. And as I mentioned earlier, all the laws in New Hampshire require that all fires be investigated to some level. So the local fire chief or the fire prevention office, as I mentioned, will be out doing an investigation. And what we really want to figure out is where the fire started, which is we refer to as the origin of the fire, and how did it start, right? And what's the cause of the fire? So our focus is origin and cause of the fire. And it's twofold, right? It's one, if there's a crime associated, we want to make sure we follow up and prosecute that. But also, I always think a bigger part of this is we want to prevent this from happening again. And whether that's working with the Consumer Product Safety Commission to do recalls potentially, or it's using tailoring our educational materials and sharing that information with fire departments throughout our state to help message, hey, we're seeing this trend of space heaters being used too close to things. We're going to focus a lot of effort on space heaters. I think the biggest message, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, is the smoke and carbon monoxide alarms are missing in a lot of cases. But so investigators they're going to ask you for consent. They're going to so the fire department owns a building, sort of owns the building. I say it's kind of a maybe aggressive term, but they essentially own the building while they're putting the fire out. But there's a period of time after that that's reasonable to do the investigation, but we want your permission to investigate the fire. So we'll come in and work with the owner to get permission that can be revoked. There's court processes that we can get a scene if we have to, but it's good if we can get consent from the owners to do the investigation. And we'll explain that we're looking for the origin and cause and the things we're trying to do. And we try to be sensitive, obviously, to the tragedy that the homeowner just went through as they work through that. And we classify fires in a couple of different ways. Whether it's an accidental fire is one of the big, the common ones. Whether it's usually those heating, cooking, electrical ones fall in that accidental category typically. It could be an incendiary fire, which is a set fire, and those clearly go in a different direction from a crime scene perspective. It could be a natural, right? A lightning strike can cause a fire, and that's a natural cause. One of the things that in the last category is undetermined. Sometimes we just can't figure it out, or we can't figure it out to a point that we're comfortable saying this fire was caused by this specific thing. Think about a kitchen fire, for instance, that's extensive damage, and you have your microwave, you might have a coffee maker, you might have an ice machine, or some other appliance in there. We can't quite say it was the coffee maker or it was the microwave. We don't do a lot of destructive things, and I think that as we talk about insurance companies, I think my perspective is once we're done, you really need to work with your insurance companies on the next steps, because they have some technology sometimes to figure out. They might take that microwave or coffee coffee machine, and they'll do x-rays potentially, or go into a lot more detail, do some testing that might take the whole thing apart and really examine it further. And we'll stop there on an accidental case, because they may subrogate and try to get their money back, and we don't want to damage that. So we might say, hey, we think it might be use a washer, a dryer fire, but we don't want to rip that dryer apart and really get in the guts of the in the dryer and potentially impact an insurance company's ability to do something down the road. So we'll stop. We believe it's accidental. We believe it's the dryer, but we're going to leave it undetermined at this point, and let the insurance company come in. So that work is done. It can take some time, right? Some scenes are very, very quick. Some scenes I know our office can be at a scene for, I've seen up to 24 hours, it seems like, sometimes working through a scene, depending on the complexity of it. And, we'll try to figure out as best we can. Then we do a report. Our office takes, some of our investigation reports can be 50 to 100 pages long. So it takes a little bit of time to get those reports, but we'll work with you to, get the information once it's done, and explain like what we found. Like we work from a kind of least damage to most damage perspective to try to figure out. We use fire patterns and fire behavior and other things to kind of assess the damage to help us figure out that how and why, or origin and cause. Whether it's us or a local fire department, they're going to kind of walk through the same process. One thing I'd like to highlight is that when we're done with it, we're going to advocate that you don't touch anything until you work with your insurance company. Insurance companies will bring in their own investigators to try to do the same thing almost that we're doing. But as I mentioned, their usual focus is, one, if it's a criminal thing and you're the one that said it, all right, there's people that set their own houses on fire. They don't want to pay you. Or go back to my examples of the dryer or an appliance, they might want to subrogate against the other, someone else to try to get their money back from that. So, we focus on, stay out of the scene, work with your insurance companies. Don't tamper with stuff until that private and your insurance company comes and takes a look, because we don't want you, as the person that just suffered this big tragedy, to go and impact something that might impact your claim and your ability to get your money and start getting your feet back under you, because it is a long process. And, we're here to help you as much as we can, whether it's, my office or a local fire department. They stand ready to help. Usually communities come together to help, but, the next part of this is a presentation. I think will be some great tips on the insurance claim itself and how to navigate that process. But I can't emphasize enough the need to work, as painful as it feels, to work the steps and work with your partners that are trying to process this together and get you through to the other side. So it's a highlight of, I guess, on the investigations. The other thing I'd like to just kind of focus on real quick is just look at some of our fire-related fatalities. As I mentioned earlier, our trend has been going up a little bit the last couple of years. We used to do about 12. It was about 11 or 12, I think, was the average for around a 5-year average. Last year, we had 23 fatalities a year. I think that might have been, if it wasn't the highest year since our office has been in existence since the 40s, it might have been the top. So we had 21 total fires, as you can see. Most of them are home fires. The ages are, typically 40 plus. We sometimes see the 65 plus as far as victims being on the higher side, but that moves back and forth. As I mentioned earlier, that smoking on oxygen trend, we had 5 of deaths last year smoking on oxygen, which was a little bit disturbing to see. Hoping to keep that down, get that back in a better direction. There's some, obviously you shouldn't be smoking on oxygen, but there's some devices that have come to the market that you can put in the nasal cannula that help minimize the impact, I guess, if someone chooses to do that. There's some efforts at the national level to try to make that available through like Medicare, Medicaid. But just know that if you come across people that may have a tendency to smoke on oxygen, there are some tools out there to try. to minimize the impact on that. I'm going to tell you that the most alarming trend, as I mentioned earlier, is that this lack of smoke alarms or working smoke alarms. Only 4 out of 16 homes last year had smoke alarms, and that has been the trend that I've seen in the office since I've been here, is that time and again, the smoke alarms are absent or they're not working. So we have the whole kind of used to be the change your clock, change your battery campaign through the National Fire Protection Association, to do try to emphasize checking the batteries at least twice a year. It's kind of turned into a check your battery, check your alarm kind of focus because of the 10-year batteries now, which are great. But we've been chatting in our office. The 10-year battery might be good, but that does that mean you kind of forget it now? Like in the newer technologies, some of these alarms, right? They're monitored on your phone. They test on their own, and you almost can put them up and forget about them. And I can't emphasize enough to make sure they're working. We had a save. We respond to a scene earlier this, I guess, end of last week, I think it was, that the only reason that person is alive is because they woke up to the sound of the smoke alarm. So I'd say that over and over again, please make sure you have working smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms in your home. It truly will save your life. So that's on that front. So what I'd like to do next is turn it over to Rebecca. Rebecca leads our community risk reduction program, and she's going to talk a little bit of our focus, our messaging, our seasonal messaging.
All right, thank you, Sean. So you already went over a lot of the things that we start looking at whenever we're planning out our messaging guides. And it all starts with what the fire departments are seeing and what they're putting in their reports. So every time the fire department submits their NFIRS reporting, we get to look at that, see the trends here in the state, and then compare that to national trends. And so a lot of times we're seeing similar things, but of course in our region, we're going to have more heating fires. So in winter, we have a really big focus on heating. That's cleaning out your chimney, making sure your appliances have been maintained, tested by professionals that are licensed, and then also carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide's more serious. We see it more during winter months, and that's because a lot of the heating appliances. So, and then Sean already mentioned the space heaters. So one of the big things about space heaters is that, like all appliances, they need to go directly into the wall, into an outlet, not using extension cords, not trusting the power strip to turn off if something overloads, but they're not meant to be plugged into that way. And that's one of the more common ones that we see. So giving the space heaters 3 feet of space, right? And then in spring, we start seeing more bark mulch fires and brush fires. That's a lot of weather changes. It's a little drier. But also, it's a good time to talk about smoking, because that's when somebody might be smoking outside and feel like that's safer. But if you're just outside smoking and you don't dispose of your cigarette properly, that has started a lot of fires as well. Last spring, Sean showed the chart with the fatalities. We had 5 older adults who passed away unnecessarily because they were smoking on oxygen. And so because that happened, we've actually seen that trend show up in a few other states that we've worked with. And so we're all trying to come up with what's the best messaging. So now when we go out, we talk about everyday fire prevention, falls prevention with older adults. We're making sure that we talk about smoking on oxygen. And a few months ago, we were doing that. And someone had mentioned, someone on oxygen said, well, I don't smoke, but I'm like to grill on my patio and the lighter doesn't work. So they have the lighter and they do it manually. And so even though they weren't smoking on oxygen, they didn't consider that a hazard to themselves because they're turning their thing off and they're not a smoker, but that's still a flame when they're completely saturated in oxygen. So it is important to talk about those and have conversations and see if there's other things that people are doing that just come about from that. And of course, summer, we're all grilling, cooking outside, a lot of fireworks safety. If you ever have any questions or are looking for resources on any of these topics, we have a lot of stuff on our website, which I can throw the link into the chat. But we recommend, cooking, keeping the grill away from the house, keeping things open, making sure if you're using propane that it's ventilated, it's not in an enclosed area, you're not cooking under your garage. And fireworks, we recommend, making sure if you purchase them, you're purchasing them from a licensed place. You can find that on our website as well, or attending public displays. And then in autumn, we start going back into heating so that even in August, we'll start pushing out more messaging about just getting the annual maintenance done on your appliances. And if we can go to the next one. So Sean alluded to the importance of having working smoke alarms. So that's our message in everything that we do. Working alarms save lives. So smoke alarms you can actually get for free from Red Cross. This is just copied from their website. The URL is at the bottom. So everybody should know about this. All you have to do is hit request a smoke alarm, fill out the form, and Red Cross will put you on a list, and then they'll reach out to you when they're in the area and able to bring one. You don't have to have proof of need. You just need to reach out and say that you need it. And in the meantime, we have a carbon monoxide grant that we're partnering with them on. And while we have supplies, they're able to also bring in carbon monoxide alarms into homes during their home fire campaign when they're in the communities. So it's just another important program to be aware of if you're a fire department and you're out, or if you're a homeowner and you don't have alarms, or your alarms are old and you're not able to replace them. This is a way to get a free one, because that's really what we're noticing. Working alarms save lives. And then for fire departments who are also on this call, would be good to also get the information for American Red Cross's disaster assistance team. So they have a special line for you to call when there is a home fire and somebody needs assistance. You can contact them directly and see if there's a way for Red Cross to help assist the families in need too. And I think that's it for us. So I will turn it over to Luann King.
There are so many things that can never be replaced from a fire, obviously, but for the things that can be replaced, that's where I'm going to talk a little bit about the insurance, what every homeowner and renter should know. And I wanted to just emphasize a little bit that renters do need to have proper coverage. Just because they don't own the structure that they live in, the policies are going to give them coverage for all of their personal belongings as well as other coverages. But today's topic is really about fire. So a renter's policy can be as inexpensive as $10 or less a month, depending on the coverages that you select. And to have such a small price per month, that in the event of a fire or something like that where all of your possessions are lost, it does seem to be a good option to have. I do know there was mention about like when you only have the clothes that are on your back. This is the part where we can talk about what we can replace, which is everything other than the memorabilia and the lives. So the very first step is you'd want to work with an independent insurance agent and tell them what you're looking for coverages, what you have, what's important to you, and they will guide you along all of your options. They're going to ask you the questions and get you the coverage options that you need. Independent agents represent different insurance companies, and while there are a lot of similarities between policies, companies try to differentiate themselves from one another by having bells or whistles or better options or cheaper rates or whatever the case may be. So an independent agent that has the ability to take your information once and return to you multiple quotes from different companies is really the way to go. The basic insurance policy will have what we call special limits of liability for certain things. There's like a cap built into the base policy for things like money, jewelry, firearms, watercraft, trailers. So if you have maybe a collection or you have more of something than an average person, that's when you could talk to your agent about possibly adding the additional coverage that would be needed for you in the event of a total fire loss, so that all of your things would be could be replaced. And replaced is that's a good segue. There's two different kinds of coverage. There's replacement cost coverage and actual cash value. The difference is really important. Say a TV has a lifespan of 10 years and 5 years in there's a total fire loss. If you had an actual cash value policy, you would get actual cash value, what it would cost to replace that cut in half. So you would be made whole for what it was actually worth. If you have a replacement cost endorsement on your policy, that would give you the ability to go out and replace that TV with like, kind, or quality as similar as you possibly can, and the insurance company would pay for the full amount. So knowing the difference before you have a loss between replacement cost and actual cash value is really important. The replacement cost is also available on the structure itself for the homeowners, the house, and other structures, detached structures like your garages, your fences, and like that. Your agent will guide you through that. Insurance companies want you to carry the right amount of limits to have the replacement cost, meaning they're going to want you to be insured to value. Your agent will help you develop how much it would cost to rebuild your home if it were burned in a total fire loss, and that will be your insurance limit. From there, every year, generally speaking, insurance policies will add what they call an inflation guard to help keep up with the cost of inflation. So you really only have to do that replacement cost evaluation once in the beginning, and then the inflation guard will just bump up your coverage slightly every renewal policy. And from there, we can go to the next slide. So it's really important that you understand what is covered by your policy, what is not covered by your policy, what your limits are that you...
Sorry, one sec. There you go. Sorry.
Okay. It's important to know what is covered, what isn't covered, what your limits are, and what your deductibles are, and your agent will help you through all of those. Not all companies are the same, as I mentioned, so you're going to really want to make sure that you're matched with the company that gives you the coverages that you want for the price that you want. We can go to the next slide. Fire damage is covered by all insurance policies, with the exception of arson that's committed by the insured. New Hampshire has a statute, it's RSA 40722, and that is the base that all insurance companies that write in the state of New Hampshire must comply with. They, generally speaking, go above and beyond that. That is just the minimum required limits that are for New Hampshire policies. And then we can go to the next slide. So you're going to have coverage your policy will give you coverage for your dwelling, for all of your other structures, detached structures on the property like your garages, sheds, and fences, and damage to your personal belongings. Next slide. And this is also a really important coverage. Your additional living expense in the event that your home is a total fire loss or just uninhabitable from a fire or other covered perils. Your insurance policy automatically will give you money for temporary housing, meals, and other related costs. This is, generally speaking, it's a percentage of coverage A, so just to use round numbers, if you had $100,000 on your house, you could have $20,000 available for additional living expense. That's, generally speaking, it's 20% of your dwelling amount that you have available. That's also, some companies allow you to increase that by endorsement. Liability is also built into your policy. If if you're responsible for a fire that spreads to a neighbor's, that can help cover. I think for this presentation, we're mainly focused on when you have a fire loss, so we can go to the next slide. And then just general, this is just a good rule of thumb, is once you do have your agent and you have your policy and you've gone through everything and you make sure that you're happy with everything on your policy, the limits and the deductibles, you're going to want to, as you get a renewal, just take a quick look at it. Has anything changed with you? Have you made any major purchases, done an addition on your house, on your garage, anything like that, that would require you to have a conversation with your agent to make some changes? To have proper coverage on an ongoing basis is critical. Your agent isn't going to know if you've done something or purchased a large item now that needs special coverage. So it's really on you when you get your renewal. Just take a minute, go through it, have a conversation with your agent. Just a good rule of thumb. We can go to the next slide. This is really important, that before you have a loss, like right now, you should have a home inventory of all of your belongings. And this can be done if you prefer paper. There are inventory samples available online. You just Google inventory sample. The NEIC has a really good sample as well. For those that have smartphones, if you just put it on record, walk through your home slowly, panning, open your drawers, look in the closets, attics, basements, garages, just so that, because as we've previously said, this is going to be a very tragic event. If you have a home fire, you're not going to necessarily be able to write down every single thing that you had in that moment of stress and duress. But having this recorded inventory or a paper inventory, even keeping receipts for, like we mentioned, high dollar purchases, that would be great. Don't keep the only copy in the dwelling. If you're doing the recording on your cell phone, you might back up automatically to the cloud. If you do the paper copy, give a copy to a relative, safety deposit box at a bank, that type of thing. Just don't keep the only copy in the dwelling itself. Next slide. Yep, and this is the we didn't give the link, but if you go to NEIC Home Inventory, there's an app in the App Store for you to download, and if that's the method that you prefer, or like I said, you can actually print off a copy and write it by hand if that's your preferred method. Then we should talk about what happens when a fire occurs from the insurance side of the house. So prompt communication with your insurer is number one. You have a responsibility based on your insurance policy. You have responsibilities that you need to take in the event of a claim. One of them is prompt communication with your agent. So you call your agent, you explain what happened, and then you follow whatever your agent tells you to do step by step, because your agent is an agent of the company, of your insurance company. So as long as you follow the instructions that the agent gives you, the insurance company is going to be satisfied, and they cannot come back and say to you, for example, that you did not complete your obligations as outlined in your insurance policy. So as tempting as it will be to throw away destroyed personal property, you're going to want to resist doing that until you are given the green light by your insurance agent, because there's going to be documentation that needs to happen before that stuff is thrown away, so that you will be eligible to get it replaced. Next slide. And this is where your home inventory, the photos that you've taken or videos that you've taken, that's where this is going to be very handy and helpful. Take off some of the stress from this time from you. And then I recommend that you keep records of all conversations, receipts, expenses, everything. Receipts such as when you have temporary housing, meals and that type of thing. That's keeping receipts. They're not going to be able to pay you unless they have confirmation that you incurred the expense. So getting receipts and keeping them is of the utmost importance. I wanted to talk a little bit about when we were discussing replacement cost versus actual cash value. So in the event of the contents, the first payment that your insurance company will give you for your contents will be based on actual cash value. Then you go out and you replace your items, provide the insurance company with the receipts, and it's at that time that the insurance company will cut you another check for the difference between what they've already paid and what it actually cost you. So that's, I don't know if everybody is aware of that, but there will be the actual cash value settlement originally. Then you replace the items, provide the receipts, you get the difference. And next slide. And that's basically insurance for fire in a nutshell, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Seeing any questions in the chat, but I invite any of our attendees to ask any questions in the chat. In the interim, I'm wondering if Marshall Toomey has any closing thoughts.
I think I'm good. I mean, I really appreciate, I think we had close to 30 people on the call. I really appreciate the partnership with the insurance department, getting this message out there. I think it's extremely valuable. I look forward to our collaboration and some thoughts that we've had, some early conversations, trying to put some materials together for after the fire, for fire departments to be able to hand out, our office to be able to hand out to people that have suffered a fire loss, to kind of help navigate this process. As I said earlier, it's a very tragic event, and it is a process that you have to go through to kind of get feedback under you and recover from these incidents. So thank you very much for inviting us and including us in this presentation today.
You're most welcome. We're happy that you were able to join us, you and Rebecca. And I just want to invite anybody who's watching this after the fact on our YouTube channel, especially from the fire community in New Hampshire, please reach out to the insurance department, because as Marshall Toomey just said, we are developing sort of a leave behind flyer that you guys can hand out when you unfortunately leave the scene of a fire, and the homeowners or residents have questions about what comes next. So by the time you're watching this on our YouTube channel, hopefully that flyer will be finished and ready for us to send to you. So by all means, please, we invite you to reach out to us so that we can get you a copy of that and have something for homeowners and residents to have in their time of critical need. We appreciate you guys joining us today. And as always, all of our webinars are available on our YouTube channel. We look forward to seeing you next month on our webinar then. Thanks very much to our guests, and take care, everyone. Appreciate you.